Here's Jeff.
My guest is Ray, who is a former teacher of art and computer science. In 2013, she became seriously ill with a mysterious illness that persisted for 3 months with no diagnosis. Even after dozens of extensive tests, her weight dropped dangerously low, and on the eve of a planned hospitalization for the insertion of a feeding tube, she was taken on board an extraterrestrial ship and completely healed by aliens. Ray, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting me on your show.
Ray, if you don't mind, can you give us a little information about your illness and then how it developed to where you needed to go to the hospital?
Yeah, well, actually, the illness started with a bad milkshake. A relative of mine and I were getting milkshakes on a hot day, and we both ended up with food poisoning. And the relative healed or got better from the food poisoning within 3 days. But for some reason, it affected me differently, and I got worse and worse until I was not able to eat anything without losing it. And eating was extremely painful. I had, extreme gut pain constantly when I was eating. So of course I wasn't eating much. It got to where all I could stomach was maybe 1 or 2 yogurts or tapioca pudding a day was all I could get down. And even drinking water was causing me to throw up. So this went on for 3 months. I was seeing a doctor weekly, on a weekly basis, and they were trying different things. They did, oh my goodness, dozens and dozens of tests. Some were not so fun, where you drink the dye and they take pictures of you, and it was just, it was horrible. I remember spending nights in the bathroom on the floor just clutching my stomach, because when you have stomach pain, there's not much that reduces that pain. There's no medicines really that help with that. And no medicine was working except for not eating. So after 3 months of this, I lost about 20 pounds, which may not seem a lot, but I was already about 120 pounds, and I'm 5'5", so I'm taller than most females. So I was just starting to go under 100 pounds. And at that point, the doctor said, we don't have anything else we can do for you other than put you in the hospital and put you on a feeding tube and IV and see what happens. So that day he told me that, he says, well, think about it. It's your choice, what you want to do. And I was weak from not eating too, I want to mention, like just walking from the doctor's office to my car exhausted me. So that night, I thought about it, and it was before bedtime. And I think what happened was reality had hit me. Now, I want to mention too that I was raised a very strict Roman Catholic, so I got a lot of religious training, which leads to, for some, a sense of spirituality, or the inner spirituality versus religion. But being a strict Roman Catholic, I learned how to, you pray. I don't know if some of you out there that are Catholic or any other religion, and also I want to mention too, I was educated in a Catholic school from grade 1 to 8. So in Catholic school, you go to church every morning. That was the beginning of your education. You have Bible study. And so I would say I was a religious person at this point, and this was in 2013, about, 9 years ago, something like that, 10 years ago. But it had, since then, because of other experiences, excuse me, because of other experiences, it had grown from a religious person to a more spiritual person. The dogmas of the religion were not sticking with me anymore because of other experiences, including an NDE. So my first instinct that night was to pray. And I prayed to God, and I prayed to Jesus, and I didn't pray for healing. And this is what is interesting. When I think back, I didn't sit down and just give up and say, God, save me, because intuitively, when the doctor told me that and I thought about it, I somehow had a knowing. Intuitively, I just knew that if I went into the hospital, I wasn't ever coming back out, that was it, that was going to be where I was going to be staying, never to return. I just knew it. So I made a vow to myself that knowing this, I was not going to go to the hospital. And that's where my prayer began. I said, God, I've tried everything. I'm not giving up. I'm still trying, but I'm not going to the hospital. And I leave this in your hands, whatever is my destiny. I'm not going to give up. And I have to say that I didn't ask for healing. I just asked for God to, what is next for me? I was going on faith, not a religious faith, but a spiritual faith, in source. And there was like this little light inside of me that I call hope that never dies. It never died, and it never does. And so I pulled on that light inside me and gave myself in a surrender to source or God. And then I went to sleep. That was it. And this is where it gets interesting. I thought that if God was to help me, that he would send me like Jesus to help me, but God didn't. He sent me ETs, like a spaceship of ETs. And what happened was I woke up on a ship. And I was lying on like a silver table, and it wasn't cold, it wasn't hot, it was comfortable. I was in my clothes, but when I opened my eyes and looked up, I saw these bright lights on me. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a robed hand with what I thought looked like a scanner, because the person was going across my body like this. So he was holding this scanner, and it was going like this back and forth across my abdomen. And the scanner was silver, probably at least a foot long, and it had like a ring of lights around it. So that's where I kind of thought immediately, oh, that's some kind of a scanner. But then reality kicked in as I'm opening my eyes, and I thought, wait a sec, what kind of medicine is that? What kind of medical technology is that? Because I have a technology background, in computer science and technology, and I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it almost reminded me of those modern scanner printers that offices sometimes use on the go, and they just scan it over a document, and then it goes into their memory. And then I kind of looked up some more, and I started to get up, and I looked to the person that was holding the scanner. And when he realized I was getting up, he seemed surprised, because he like stepped backwards and goes like this. Like I startled him, and I'm like, what kind of doctor gets startled like that? Like, that's weird. And then he had a covered hood, so I couldn't see his face. And then I realized that there was someone else in the other, farther away behind him by a counter. And there was somebody behind me as well, because I could feel his hand on the back of my head. And his hand felt like big puffy fingers, like not small human fingers. They were big and puffy, like maybe just 3 or 4 fingers. And it was like right on the back by I guess you call that cerebrum. And I later found out that the cerebrum is a part of your head that if you want to knock someone unconscious, you can hit someone in the back of the head there. And that's why they fall unconscious. It has to do with vertigo and such. But he had his hand there gently. And I remember the person holding the scanner, he just stood back and waited and kind of looked past me. So that's how, again, I knew somebody was behind me. And also, telepathically I could hear voices, but I didn't understand the voices. That was a weird language. And that confused me too, because I was picking something up telepathically. And I have a history of being just kind of from childhood slightly psychic. So telepathy isn't that new to me. But when the person holding the scanner was waiting, the person holding the back of my head pressed on my head with his hands, which is really weird. And I fell asleep again. I woke up again later. And as I woke up, I could hear even more telepathically the person behind me and the person that was, I'm going to say, the ET doctor, was having a telepathic conversation. And I was picking up some of it here and there. And one of the words that I picked up was the word cerebrum, which is, or cerebral. And there was some other stuff going on, but I really can't remember what other words I heard, because some of the words, like I said, were not English and I was just not interpreting them. I guess I'm not that good telepathically, but I did hear them talking. And then I felt the pressure on the back of my head from the guy behind me, and I fell asleep again. And then I woke up, I don't know how long later, I woke up being dropped back in my bed. And I want to say too that my dog was sleeping on my bed with me. When I was dropped back on my bed and I was looking around, my dog was on the floor on the carpet, sound asleep. Like, how did he get there? And why is my dog sleeping soundly? So that was kind of weird. So I guess my dog was my witness in a weird way. But I felt like I was being dropped from about 1 inch up above my bed and down. And my blanket was back over me, but it wasn't covering my feet, which is kind of weird. And my clothes were still on. I think I was wearing a sweatsuit or something. But I remember getting up again, still remembering where I was and what had happened, in complete shock and startlement. I started getting up again, and telepathically and almost third eye visually, I could see the doctor, the ET doctor, and he was saying to me, stay off your feet a few days. And that was it. And then he disappeared, from my consciousness. And I thought, that's weird. And I started to get up again, and I suddenly felt extremely tired. And what's really weird is I didn't wake up till like 11 o'clock in the morning that next morning. Something weird had happened. I usually, because of my stomach issues, I was waking up at 6 or 7 o'clock every morning. And even my dog slept in. So that's weird. So I didn't realize it was a healing until, and a lot of this is intuitive stuff that I guess with a lot of spiritual training and experience, you learn to rely on your intuition eventually. And I always rely on my intuition. So even at that point, so when I got up the next morning, I started to sit up thinking, oh, that was a weird dream. And then I felt this tinge of pain in my abdomen. And I thought, what the heck? And I look at my abdomen, and it's got a 1 inch gold colored scar on my abdomen. And I was in shock. And then I thought, am I like seeing things? Did I die? What's going on? I was just in complete confusion. So I grabbed my phone and I took pictures of my scar, not for others, but to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy and this really happened. And now I have a scar. I took some pictures, like 3 pictures, and then I put the phone down because I was suddenly feeling ravenously hungry. I walked over to the fridge and started eating everything I could find that was still in my fridge. And lo and behold, it didn't make me sick. It didn't hurt my stomach. I didn't throw up. I just kept eating. And I ended up eating like that for 2 weeks and gained a lot of weight back, like 10 pounds back. And so, at that point where I was eating that first morning and I wasn't getting sick, I knew and realized that they had healed me. And when that realization hit me, this chills just all over my body and realization. and chills, for anyone that's experienced them, when someone says something to them and they feel chills, that's your subconscious or your higher self recognizing that this is truth, that those chills are a symptom of truth. And realizing that they had healed me, I felt so grateful, but at the same time, a huge conflict, because it scared the heck out of me. Like, this is weird. And I almost felt angry at God for sending me ET instead of Jesus. And so, yeah, and that was paradigm shifting for me, this experience. Paradigm shifting, because not only was there a huge conflict of religion and spirituality, but mostly my religious training, that suddenly there's ET, because anyone who's had a lot of religious training in any of the religions, the talk of ETs is just, no, you don't do that. There's no such thing. So that was just, and if there is talk of ETs, that's the work of the devil. Basically, that's that's what I was led to believe. So there was huge conflicts going on with me, but at the same time, I was so happy that I was healed. And I didn't tell anybody for probably another two years at least about this experience that I had been healed. I kept it a secret because I was afraid of what other people would say. They would